My husband claimed the distance was just stress from work, yet the private messages on his phone confirmed the connection he denied. The first thing I noticed was the way he stopped reaching for me in the dark. We had always been a tangle of limbs, his calf over my ankle, my shoulder under his arm, an unconscious braid we rewove every night even when daylight left us frayed. Then, suddenly, the braid came undone. He would slide into bed carefully, like a guest trying not to wake the host, and lie on the edge, a silent inch of mattress between us that felt wider than a continent. When I asked, he gave the same answer. Work is insane, babe. Once the quarterly audit is over, we'll breathe again. He kissed my forehead, but the kiss landed cold and evaporated. I told myself stories in his voice. He's exhausted. He's worried about layoffs. He's only 35 and already graying at the temples. Of course sex feels like another deadline. I rehearsed patience the way other people rehearse gratitude, counting blessings instead of cracks. We still had breakfast together. He still made my coffee. He still texted, on my way, love you, every evening before leaving the office. Then the text messages started arriving later. Not late. Later. 8:30 became 9, 9 became 10, and always the same excuse. Last-minute meeting. Boss wants numbers tonight. Team dinner. I can't say no. I would answer, no worries, drive safe, and stare at the television until the pixels blurred, my body angled toward the door, listening for the elevator's ding. One Thursday he came home smelling of citrus and sea salt, a scent too summery for October. He said they'd ordered Thai by the harbor. I pictured fluorescent lanterns, boats creaking in the dark, and a woman laughing across the table while she pushed a strand of hair behind her ear. I hated that the image arrived fully formed, as if it had been waiting for clearance. The next night I found myself standing in his study at 2 a.m., heart hammering like a faulty printer, holding the phone he'd left charging. We'd never locked our devices. Why would we? Our lives were supposed to be an open browser. But tonight the screen lit with a notification that made my stomach dip. Lexi briefcase. Can't stop thinking about yesterday. Lexi. A name I knew. A junior analyst who joined his department 6 months ago, the one he called the spreadsheet whisperer, the one he'd mentioned during a dinner anecdote, how she'd worn mismatched earrings to present to the board and still charmed every seat. I remembered the lift in his voice, the small, involuntary smile that I tapped. The thread opened mid-conversation, as though it had been waiting for me to catch up. Lexi. You felt so good against my back in that elevator, my husband. I was, accidentally, close. You smelled like rain. Lexi. Rain wants to be invited. Next time, invite my husband. Next time is tomorrow. Same floor. Bring the lipstick that stains. Further down, a photo. Lexi in a restroom mirror, blouse unbuttoned just enough to reveal the edge of a crimson bra. Caption. Countdown to lunch. His reply, I'm starving. The images kept coming, hotel confirmations, voice notes, promises of what they would do once the coast is clear. They spoke in code about meetings that didn't exist, about spreadsheets that were never meant to be balanced. They joked about me. She thinks I'm buried in ledgers. I am, just not the kind that balance. They even had a nickname for my trust. The safety net will cut loose after the holidays. I read until the words lost meaning and became only shapes of betrayal. Then I put the phone back, walked to the bathroom, and threw up quietly, holding my hair with the same hand that still wore the thin gold band he'd slipped on 5 years ago while we were both crying and laughing and promising forever. The next morning he kissed my cheek, tasted of mint and innocence, and asked if I wanted an extra shot in my latte. I watched him move around the kitchen, the man I had loved since we were broke interns sharing a single umbrella, and I realized the audit he kept mentioning wasn't fiscal, it was moral, and the books were catastrophically unbalanced. That evening I drove to his office at 6, texted, surprise coffee run, and waited in the lobby with 2 cappuccinos. He appeared at 6:40, Lexi beside him, laughing up at him the way I used to when he told my favorite terrible joke. She wore the crimson lipstick. He saw me, stopped mid-sentence, and the blood drained from his face so fast I thought he might faint. I walked over, handed them each a cup. Thought you could use the energy, I said pleasantly. Lexi's eyes flicked to mine, then to his, then to the floor. Steam rose between us like a curtain about to fall. I didn't speak again until we were home. Then I placed my phone on the table, screen up, the recovered messages glowing like radioactive evidence. I watched him read, watched the color return and leave again, watched the joke die in his throat. "I can explain," he whispered. "You already did," I answered. 54 times since August. He cried, shoulders shaking, nose running, the ugly cry of a boy caught rather than a man confessing. He spoke of pressure, of midlife panic at 36, of how I was too perfect, how he felt he was disappearing. The words spilled out, raw and desperate, but they couldn't find purchase on the smooth surface of my new indifference. I packed while he sobbed. The dinosaur decals we'd chosen for the nursery stared from the wall, bright and oblivious. I remembered how carefully he'd smoothed each one, how he'd stepped back to admire the scene and said, "Our kid is going to love this." Now the Stegosaurus looked like it was raising a spiked tail in warning. The door I turned. "You were right about one thing," I said. He lifted swollen eyes. "The distance wasn't stress. It was you, choosing to be somewhere else." I left the cappuccino cooling on the hall table, a relic of a surprise that had surprised me more than him. Outside, the city hummed with its usual indifference, but the air felt wider, as if the streets had been repaved while I wasn't looking. I didn't know where I would sleep that night, only that it would be a place where incoming messages could not rewrite my worth, where the only odd it left to balance was the one between me and whoever I decided to become next.